Afternoon everyone, and welcome to schools dialing in from around the country. Just a quick wave to my son Evan and the Year 6 class at St John's, and also to Ash class at Watchley's School who helped me with the presentation. Listen to your teacher. Please say hi in the comments to tell us where you're watching from. Today I'm talking to you from the Climate Conference in Scotland, where world leaders are meeting to talk about climate change and what we can all do to reduce the impacts. You're in a classroom now, and so am I. I'm in a new wooden classroom of the future that we've built to show how schools could look. We'll play a short film at the end to tell you a little bit more about it. In the next 10 minutes, we're going to cover 4 things. Firstly, too wet. We're going to talk about types of flooding and how your school can be ready. And then for too dry, we're going to talk about how schools can use water and how they can make sure that how they use water is sensible. First of all, a really simple explanation of how the climate changes. The climate, or the weather, is changing in a number of ways due to the amount of certain gases in the air, like carbon dioxide, that comes from when we burn things, fuels, and when we use transport, and also from methane, that comes from things like cows' bums. These gases make it more difficult for the heat from the sun to escape back into space, which means the planet is warmer, and that affects the climate and also the weather. Some of the ways it affects it are that it's getting hotter in the summer and the winter. The amount of rain that we get in the winter is increasing. Summer rain is reducing, but there will be more thunderstorms. And the water level in the sea is very slowly getting higher. Did you know in England there are lots of schools, more than 20,000, and millions of school pupils, over 9 million, and you can all do your bit. So first of all, I'm going to start with telling you about too much water, when things are too wet and we can have floods. There are 3 main types of flooding. First of all, from rivers. This can be deep, it can last a long time, it can be fast moving, and the water isn't always clean. Secondly, from the sea. This doesn't happen very often, but it can be really difficult to stop, like when you've built a sandcastle at the beach and the tide comes in and washes it away. And lastly, from surface water. That's when it just rains really, really hard. That can happen almost anywhere, and it can happen with not very much warning. It's really important we understand where water might go. Here's an example of a school, a primary school, that got flooded when it was too wet in July this year after really heavy rain. All the drains in the road were full of water, and the rain couldn't get away. The water got to about knee-deep in the school, knee-deep on an adult. Everywhere on the ground floor of the school was flooded, school kitchens and school reception. All of the classrooms got flooded, and the school hall, and all the way along the corridors. We've been working with that school to make sure it could open again and the children could all get back into lessons. The whole school is now in these temporary classrooms. These use up a lot of playground space. School dinners, which were in the hall, are now in a big tent that's usually used for weddings. Sometimes it's going to get quite cold in there in the winter, and this also takes up more space in the playground. The school hall is full of things from the rest of the school now. It's like a big storage cupboard. There's no space for anything else, and no space for assemblies. How would you like these to be your school toilets? We've had to dig out all the ground in these toilets because it was too difficult to dry it out in any other way. And how would you like to be taught in a classroom like this? There's some really easy things that you and your teacher can do to understand more about flooding. First of all, go on the internet and look at the flood risk in the areas where your school is. You can also look up your house too and tell your parents to do the same. Just simply get your teacher or your parents to type in, check your long-term flood risk for schools. You can get warnings for some types of flooding. This can give an alert in advance so that things can be moved and everything kept safe. And your school can make sure it has a plan in place to make sure you can move things if the water comes. You don't need to worry about this though, just talk to your teachers about it and make sure you understand what the risk might be. We're also doing lots of things to reduce the risk of schools getting wet. In some places, we give money to help big flood schemes to be built like this one in the north of England. They're building a massive earth embankment, hundreds and hundreds of metres long. These types of things help protect schools. They help keep them open, and they also protect nearby houses, shops and roads. Sometimes we have to stop water getting into the school by putting floodgates and flood doors in. We have to cover some bricks which have holes in them with to stop water getting through. And we also have to block toilets to stop water and other much worse things bubbling back up. Sometimes those schools do get wet, and we've worked with those schools to help make sure it doesn't happen again. At this school, we've put in nearly 30 mini gardens underneath the drain pipes. The water now comes out of the drain pipes through this cloud. We've also raised an area of the playground and put some grass on the top of it to make the water flow into a drain. This helps stop flooding, and it also provides more green space for bees and bugs and butterflies. The pupils at that school helped us out. They had competitions in their class to design the signs to explain how things worked. They also helped us out on a planting day when the whole school got involved. It was a great fun day. Some of the children had never planted anything before, and everyone learnt a lot. There are lots of ways you could help out to make sure your school doesn't get wet. Trees and green areas are great for soaking up water. Could your school have more? Making sure drains are clear is really important too, so water can't get away, and make sure you tell teachers if you think they're blocked. And you can also do really cool things too, like the picture at the bottom, where the drain pipes on the side of the building are in the shape of the local rivers. What could your school do? So that's the end of my too wet bit. Now I'm going to talk about too dry with lots of pictures of toilets. Schools use loads of water every single day. If every pupil in England just used the loo once, that would be 9 million loo flushes a day. And we know that saving water is really important for the school and for the environment. Not many schools are water efficient and use water really sensibly. In 1 in 7 schools, each pupil uses more than 10 metres cubed of water a year. If you stretch your arms out, that's about a metre. So it's one of those, by one of those, by one of those. It's about a tonne. That's the same as 50 baths worth of water a year that you're using at school. Or one of these fire tankers. How much do you use at your school? And could you be more sensible with the water? There are lots of things that schools can do. It's really important that you use water wisely, like making sure you turn taps off properly. If your school has an eco-council or an environment group, do you check for leaks and drips? How often do you do this? And what do you do if you find any? When you've reported things, do they get fixed? And have you worked out how many bathtubs worth of water you've saved? Anything you can do all adds up and is good for your school and also for the environment. I know everyone likes a maths question, so I'm going to end with one of those. It can also save your school money. So here's a quick maths question. We found a school recently that had 2 very leaky loos. They were leaking all the time, 24 hours a day, all through the year. We worked out that if those leaks were fixed, this could save the school £6,000 a year. What sort of things could your school spend that money on instead? Do you have any ideas? And can you make sure that your school is being as efficient with its water as possible? So thanks for listening. Today we've learnt about flooding and what you can do. And we've also learnt about how to be careful with water. And now we're just going to show you a quick 3-minute video about the classroom that we're stood in today.